Okay, today is August the 18th. Thank you so much for joining live, and thank you for those who will be watching the replay and your constant support when it comes to becoming a future diplomat. So, not by any stretch am I learning all this by myself and for myself. I am, as I was sharing with another future diplomat here who will be testing in October, I am very much just like you. I do not work for the Department of State. You guys keep me accountable, and I am learning these things that are really, one, making me more appreciative of our country every time I flip a page, every time I finish an audiobook or a podcast. But if anything, it makes me more excited every single day to become not only a future diplomat, but also a future ambassador when that time happens. So that being said, today we're going to talk about something that a lot of people may find a little boring. However, I think it's really exciting, especially when it seems like U.S. history is more of just a reflection of what's still happening today sometimes. And so that's the reason why I titled it U.S. History and Current Events, because what I've noticed is that there's a lot of things that have happened in the past that sometimes are coming right back. Right now, the world is and this is coming from a citizen of the United States, not taking any political agenda towards conversation, but more so just being objective towards how the United States itself is being pursued. So, current events, and this is not a dive into fully everything that's happened. So if you know some things that are happening, again, feel free to come off mute. But I was speaking to a friend of mine recently about current events, specifically about Russia. And I know with Russia, it seems like it's a word, it's a country, it's a name that you hear so often. And here recently in the war that Ukraine is having with Russia, they're getting a footing forward in the war. They're able to successfully say that they have occupied one of Russia's cities for the first time in this entire war. Now, historically speaking, Russia is not new to war, right? They have stood toe to toe with some of the world's largest powers, either on a friendly matter or a faux matter. And even historically speaking, the United States was one of their friends at some point, until we weren't. And I think the tide turned for the United States when there was betrayal. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. There was another future diplomat who's in the study group who shared a Netflix docuseries with us, and I had a chance to watch it, and I finally finished it. It's about the Cold War, and that really gave me a really shiny perspective. And I say shiny, I mean I never really looked at it that way before. It was just interesting to see how we as the United States, perspective wise, we're known for a few things. As far as Japan, and of course, the nuclear war, we made a huge flex, and that kind of stopped things, but it didn't stop the production of nuclear weapons. And that's where the beginning of the Cold War began, right after World War II. And these different countries, including China, including Russia, they continued their production of nuclear weapons. But from that point forward, it was more so a threat. It was just constant threatening of nuclear weapons. So we're going to dive deeper, a little deeper into that tonight. We're just going to go over some specific items that have come up over time, and to make it relevant, I've looked up some items that have happened since um, I've been born, and I've looked up some items that have happened dating back into the 40s, which is in my mom. Um, no, yeah, it's when my mom was born. So there's different things, and probably a lot of your parents and grandparents. So in the course of our lives and our families' lives, a lot of dramatic things and traumatic things have happened in our time. History itself is not clean, and even growth of a lot of our countries have happened at the hands of many lives and deaths. So not to make this like too funny at all, because a lot of things that we celebrate today, a lot of blood, was has hit the ground. So especially living here in Georgia, there's always different signs and different things, especially coming from like Sumter, South Carolina, when it comes to the Civil War. We're going to talk a little bit about that. There's a lot that has happened there, and we're just going to go into it. I'm going to share my screen with you. And what you're looking at, what's more so what you will be looking at, is Evernote. I use Evernote to share my brain, essentially. If I'm having any projects, any thoughts, or anything I'm trying to develop, I will use Evernote, and I'll share Evernote with people who are close in my circle. I may use Google Docs if it's more than like 10 or 5 people, or 30 people who may need to share some notes. But for the sake of this training and what we're talking about today, we're going to be looking at different world events that have happened in the course of our lifetime and our family's lifetime, and as it relates to the actual FSOT that we'll be taking here in October. So world history, United States history, current events, these are a part of the test. And I used to wonder, well, what's so important about world history and current events? Well, why do we need to know these things? And I realized, regardless if we're in public diplomacy and operations, or management, or diplomatic relations, or like no matter what our role is within the Foreign Service, we all are part of that mission. And oftentimes there's things that are happening around us that we may not, if we're not sure, if we're not aware, history repeats itself. So we need to make sure, and it seems sometimes larger than life to consider, and I am getting a little bit more serious here, like even more serious. It's sometimes it's a little bit larger than life when it comes to think that, wow, when it came to life or death situations, even for a counselor or consular cone, that it seems like it was only like the CIA that had to worry about their lives, right? If they became agents. But if you are even in the consular cone, or no matter what cone you are in with the Department of State, there are other countries who may try to sneak terrorists in, or who may try to coordinate with you to provide money opportunities to you, to sway you to join their cause, join their side. It's important to understand what countries we're friendly with, what countries we have relationships with, countries we have bad relationships with, but also in addition to that, countries who there's also new countries that are essentially becoming established on the world stage, and who knows if they're friendly or foe. But obviously our job will be as future diplomats is to build bridges and build relationships, and to leverage those relationships to help empower the common countries. So, but even in our jobs, no matter what our jobs will be with the Department of State, there are things that we need to be aware of, and looking at history is going to be the clear and easy way of being able to kind of spot out some of those signs. So at a high level, I'm just going to review a few things tonight, and just to kind of make a list verbally, and show you what we're going to be reviewing. World events between 1987 and 2024, which is current date. United States national events, same time period. This is just selfish for me because I'm from North Carolina. I wanted to, and I generated some of this and also researched some of this. So I wanted to kind of compile a lot of this in one space and again, make it personal, make history personal to me. Because some of these things are going to be on the test, some of the things are not. And you probably wonder, well, how do you know if some things are going to be on the test? This is not going to be on the test, but this is Colin Powell's memoir, his autobiography, My American Journey. Really, it's a thick book, but it's a good read. I am just getting started with it, but he was head of the Department of State, Secretary of State in his journey, and that was good. But all of this is on my desk because I want to understand what his thinking was when he joined and when he made some changes. But as always, a lot of the things that I have shared in the study groups have come from these books that my wife got me. She wanted to make sure that I was fully prepared. And a lot of the content I've shared with you is coming from here, and also some of the, and also from audiobooks, and also from the Foreign Service Compass, which I still use and have access. If anybody's interested, that's in the WhatsApp group that wants to get access to it for 24 hours, just let me know and I'll share the login information with you. And lastly, the FSOT app, where there's practice tests in there and also study materials. Last resource I'm going to share with you as far as things that I have brought to the group, but also things that have helped me make U.S. history relevant to me and more digestible when it comes to learning. There's also an app that is gamified called Trivia Crack that I've used to specifically target U.S. history, and not just wars, but advancements and different things that have made the United States what it is today. So world events during the same time period, we're going to go over those. Global and U.S. events. I was just kind of curious about when the Me Too movement happened, because I did realize that some things were impacted on a global level, including some other cultures and technology. Yeah, positive world events, negative world events, the end of the Cold War. As you see, this is a lot that we're going to dig through, but I definitely want to make sure I spend some time in the Cold War, the Gulf War, and that's where we will conclude. And again, if you have questions, if you have anything to contribute, it's not just me lecturing. This is a conversation as we're all studying and sharpening iron with each other. So again, speaking to another future diplomat in the group, off scene, not off scene, but out of the WhatsApp group. Yeah, Diana.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, how are you? The Me Too movement, I think you just mentioned, started at 2006.
It started in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me note that so I can go and develop it, right? And learn a little bit more. Thank you. What do you know a lot about it, or?
Well, yeah, a little bit. I did some research on it back in, I was in college and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you for sharing. I'll go and see, exactly what happened then, so I can try to catch up with the research you've done. And if there's anything you want to share as far as directly with me, definitely, yeah, put it in the group or just send it to me directly. I've always been interested in things like this as far as how people treat each other, because that's what the entire world is, just people treating each other either good or bad. So it's just weird to me how a lot of those things have happened, but there's definitely global impact. One thing that I was looking at, and this is not to skip, but more so just to mention Google. Google's mission, their company mission, is to make the world accessible or give information to the world, something like that. And I realize even companies like Google, although anyway, even companies like Google wouldn't have existed no time soon, at least, without and I don't, not trying to offend anybody or anything, but some things I had noticed in history that I used to wonder, well, how did countries become connected before the internet, before Google, before encyclopedias, before much of anything, was possible? And of course, people had boats, and there were exploratory missions, and some countries, including Spain and other countries, they went to go see other places. They want to know what was going on. They discovered different things. Even America was named. The name America is Italian. Is an Italian woman, but that name itself, Christopher Columbus, he saw and explored so many different countries in the west part of the world where we're from, and where we are. And I don't think, although some of the bad parts that came with exploring and colonizing and conquering, I don't think companies like Google or even Netflix would even exist, obviously without the internet. But as far as connectivity, without the world being known and silos being kind of destroyed, I think that without those kind of bad things that have happened, we wouldn't have some of the good things that we do have today. But that's just my own little research as far as, and more so thoughts about exploratory and different things that have happened. Something that I saw also that was a little controversial in developing research was Ethiopia. Although it's the only country that has not been colonized, it was attempted to be conquered and occupied by Italy. And Italy, I guess they didn't have good relationships with Germany. And this is also something that I got from that YouTube, not YouTube, but a Netflix special. But and also the app. So it was like cross information, and it was just kind of good to have it show different points of it being true. But Germany, in the aspect of Hitler, very historically not a good guy at all. His own people killed him, but he aided Ethiopia in defeating Italy so that they wouldn't conquer. Not because he liked Ethiopia, but he just didn't like Italy. And when I say he, also his country, because Italy didn't want to collaborate on joining his mission. I thought that was interesting. That again, very bad people, very bad situation, but something unfortunately good, and that's Ethiopia never being colonized. But high level world events, 1987 to 2024. 1989 through 1993, the presidency of George W. Bush. And you're going to see some of these things repeated before, or repeated below more so. But you'll also, and I'm just going to try not to spend too much time on those that are, but specifically his contribution for the Gulf War and the end of the Cold War. Again, speaking about the Cold War, although it has such a simple name, and although there were no nuclear weapons involved, before Vladimir became the president, he was a part of their government, of their Ministry of Defense. And he had an official title. He was in the role. He was being groomed early on. We know or have heard of, and if you haven't heard of, you've seen his face. His name is Stalin, Joseph Stalin. He was responsible for a lot of deaths when it came to the Cold War. So although nuclear devices were not involved, and although Joseph Stalin was actually a friend of the United States in defeating certain countries, he later started doing some really bad things, including starving certain countries that he had taken over and occupied. And in order to mentally take control of these countries that he had occupied and taken over, he completely destroyed their farmlands, so they couldn't sustain themselves, they couldn't feed themselves. And this, all this information is accessible, you know, and you can research it all. But it's, again, interested in how people treat each other after certain conditions have been met. But there was a country, and I don't remember the name of the country, but they started cannibalism toward each other just to feed their kids. And I thought that was just brutal. And how could any world leader be that ruthless? But I'm grateful for the end of the Cold War. And the Cold War itself is a huge story, but we'll touch on it. But definitely, if you have not studied, this is the time to study, as we are going to prepare for the test, to take the test here in weeks to come. So I want to say 5 weeks? 5 weeks to come. Fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, symbolizing the end of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall, does anybody know much about the Berlin Wall? I know it divided two countries, and I want to say Russia was one of them, and what was the other country? Do y'all know? Let's find out together, just so I'm not it was just Berlin, East and West Berlin. Go ahead, Ruben.
Hey, Travis. Yeah, so the Berlin Wall was dividing Soviet bloc from Western bloc. So by that time, they had Eastern European countries, which are part of the Soviet bloc, Soviet Union bloc. And so they had the Eastern Germany part of the Soviet bloc, and they called it Warsaw Pact. And at the same time, the entire Western world, United States zone, European zone of Great Britain and France, when they divided after the World War II. So the Western part was part of the Western Germany, and it was this kind of wall between the Western and Eastern world, Soviet bloc and Western world. So, and with the fall of the Berlin Wall, so two Germanys got united, and this is how the kind of Cold War ended.
Good to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. Something that I saw on that Netflix special was that there were family members who were visiting other places that were divided by this wall, and until the wall came down, they were not able to see each other for long periods of time. In fact, if they were to approach the wall at this checkpoint, that they would be shot. Very gruesome. Let's see. 1990. And this is not that long ago, right? This is the United States was established just a few hundred years ago, right? So, and this is just a few decades ago. And so 1990, the Gulf War, Iraq invades Kuwait, leading to the international coalition and Operation Desert Storm. 1991, dissolution of the Soviet Union. So it was the USSR, and which leading to the emergence of 15 independent countries. So, countries are going to want their resources. Countries are going to want to take other people's resources, other countries' resources. So that's the reason why I think some of these countries are still at war now, but they're independent. And Russia is looking to kind of pick up where Stalin left off, to my understanding, based on some things that I've been paying attention to in The Economist. 1993 to 2001, Bill Clinton, notable for the economic growth, NAFTA, and the Lewinsky scandal. I don't think that's going to be on the test. 1994, the end of the apartheid in South Africa. Nelson Mandela election as president. I really want to learn more about this one because I think South Africa is one of the 5 countries I would like to pick on Flag Day on A100. Rwandan genocide, approximately 800,000 people killed. 1999, Hurricane Floyd, this happened in North Carolina. I don't think that's going to be on the test. September 11th, terrorist attacks. As it relates to current events, people who were involved in the September 11 attacks, who have been in Guantanamo Bay, to my understanding, by the United States, they have been trying to reach a deal so that they can not be killed and not be there for the rest of their lives. So they're they're just admitting that they had their parts in it. 2001 through 2009, W. Bush, George presidency, response to 9/11, war on terror and the Iraq War. 2001 to 2021, war in Afghanistan. It's a long war, the longest war in U.S. history. 2002, Washington, D.C., sniper attacks. Again, I don't know if that's going to be on the test, but these are pretty big things that have happened right here in the United States. So I am going to fast forward to a few things that do definitely involve us, especially as it relates to NATO and the United Nations. 2004, expansion of the European Union, including several Central and Eastern European countries. I'm going to fast forward to, actually, I don't know if this may be on it, because I don't know if this is relating to diplomacy, but I have heard a lot of ambassadors, U.S. ambassadors, speak about this on different podcasts. Supreme Court in the 2015 legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. And the name of that case was Obergefell versus Hodge. European refugee crisis, significant influx of refugees in Europe, 2015. I think this is interesting because this is not the first time this has happened. I think this has also happened in the 60s as well, but I will do more research about that. Brexit, again, something a little bit more recent. UK votes to leave the European Union, and that was in 2016. I don't know if that's going to be involved. All right, fast forwarding on. So this is something that we spoke about one time before, 2021, the Capitol riot, the attack on the U.S. Capitol by supporters of President Trump. This is generated. I don't fully believe that they're all supporters of President Trump, because I'm not trying to get into a political conversation about it. But what I will say is, looking objectively into it, is that when the the Confederation of the United States, essentially the Confederate Nations, or the Confederate Nation, United Confederate Nations, it was started essentially civil war. They didn't believe that the United States as we know it today, as far as where we come from, was working on their behalf. And they essentially kind of started out this same way, where the first bullet was shot or fired in Sumter, South Carolina. But some of those people who were responsible for saying, hey, we don't want to be a part of the United States anymore. We want to do our own thing. We don't want to end slavery. This is working for us. We have generations of money tied to this. We have relationships with Wells Fargo and blah, 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 all these different banks. We have good relationships based on the money that we're producing, like, soybeans, cotton, and other items that have essentially given them generational wealth. And with the ending of slavery, that's not something that, well, that's something that really kind of fueled the Civil War, is that they didn't want to be a part of that. They wanted to keep things the same. So, and some of those people, after they lost, and they did become an official kind of country, right? They had their own song, like national anthem, but they lacked the government. So that may be something that may be on the test as well. They didn't have many like bylaws or even amendments, and they didn't have a well-built constitution. They didn't have a lot of the structure the United States had the time to build over time. So some of those people who were involved, including the president and vice president of those Confederate States of America, they later became senator and governor of the of some states, of two states in the United States. One of them being Georgia, and the other being, I'll let you do your research so you can fill that in, because I forgot the. Actually, I'm just gonna look it up real quick. Vice. But the only reason why I mention that is because although it's related to history, current events, that just happened a few years ago. And that was the beginning of essentially what could have been another civil war, because the country was already torn, right? A lot of hate was in the air. And as it relates to current events, allegedly, Russia was involved in sensationalizing social media advertising to sway our voting process, but also to make the American people kind of, what the word that they would use was polarized, making you take a stand on one side or the other. And if you really hated this, then you really love this type of content. And they just constantly stoke the fire. So Russia, although that was a social media attack, which eventually kind of stemmed the creation of the United States Space Force, which focuses on cybersecurity. That was not heavily publicized. That was under President Trump's, former President Trump's presidency. Although I'm thinking that it was already in the making. He just happened to be president during that time. I don't think he said, "Hey, we need to start this." But I just thought it was very significant because Russia is constantly threatening the United States. We had a few years ago, just a couple years ago, during the pandemic, multiple companies' data was breached. Here recently, in the last 7 days, I think close to I forgot how many people, but millions and millions and millions and millions of people's social security numbers and telephone numbers and their birthdays and names and addresses were breached. Cybersecurity is a rising need, and it used to be a part of the United States Air Force. But yeah, with the Space Force, that's what their complete focus is maintaining that grid. Mr. Vice President of the Confederacy, Alexander Hamilton Stevens, he was vice president, and then he later became trying to read this as quickly because I want to remember that. Okay, just for the sake of time, U.S. Representative of Georgia. So he also was U.S. Representative of Georgia. He was a Democrat. But yeah, Congress of the Confederate States. Now, this is something I have not looked up, so I'm going to look this up in my own time. But as future diplomats, I think it's important that we're aware of our history, so we're paying attention to what has happened before and how we can prevent it today. I'm pretty sure on some level, and I've seen different job applications for this. I thought it was a joke, honestly, but a joke is as in I thought it was just something on the internet that people created. But Star Trek, right? Star Trek, and I sound so nerdy saying this. Star Trek is space diplomacy, and apparently there's real jobs where you can be a space diplomat. And just like Antarctica, there's going to be parts of space and including in our space station, which is being decommissioned in the next decade. But there's going to be more things that will need diplomacy, and it's not going to be in the world. So it's going to be above it. Do your own research about that. I thought it was a joke, but it's apparently this is a real thing, and it's sponsored by the Department of State. So fast forwarding on, let's see, Kevin Wright, Joe Biden, Russia invades. It's already 7:44, so we're like 45 minutes in already, and we're only in the most recent years. But I think that what's happening with Russia, if we're not careful, we could be entering like a World War III, because I mean Russia is constantly pulling their ships up to Florida by Cuba and saying, "Hey, we can shoot things into the United States if you keep messing with us, or if you're not careful." Canada is throwing their hat in the ring and saying, "Hey, we're back in the United States. This is North America. You can't touch us." But current events, that is, if you're not subscribed to The Economist or any of those other really good BBC, world news, I would definitely, look into those for current events. A lot of these things that are happening today are stemmed from what is happening in the past. So to go beyond what's happening in just my life, looking beyond that, so to speak a little bit more about the Cold War and then the Gulf War, and then we'll wrap. I will share this more so the information in the WhatsApp chat, but because I know that the Cold War is going to be on the test. It's all throughout this book because it's more so happened during this period of time, including World War I and World War II. What happened economically with our country? What happened in other countries? How we eventually had the largest military force in the world, and how other countries focused on populating their country so that they could compete with our military. But the end of the Cold War, as Ruben was sharing, there was a lot of tension between the Soviet Union and its satellite states and the United States, along with its allies, beginning shortly after World War II, and lasted for much of the second half of the 20th century. And it was characterized by political military ideology rivalry, but stopped short at the full-scale direct military conflict between the two superpowers. Key events in leading to the end, and then I will jump to the Gulf War. Mikhail Gorbachev reforms, or Gorbachev reforms in the mid 1980s, the introduction of policies like Perestroika. Please forgive me. I feel like I'm jacking these names up, but you can definitely see them on the screen for yourself. Economic restructuring and glasnost, political openness in the Soviet Union set the stage for significant changes. Of course, fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989, the symbol of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall fall was a key event signifying the collapse of communist regimes in Eastern Europe. I think today Cuba is the only communist country, to my understanding. The United States,
China as well.
China. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I forgot about it. Thank you for reminding me. Xingyun, that there's like this Chinese ballet that goes all across the world, well, across the United States. That's why I learned that a little bit more about it. China, they, again, politics to the side, one child law. They need more sons. They want to control who you pray to, not who you, but who their citizens pray to. They monitor media going in and out, and they are involved in every business, just like the United States government. As far as this part, they're involved in every business that does business with China. So, but a lot of other things are involved there. Communism has a huge negative thought about it, especially I think because of the people, the dictators and the leaders who are part of it. The United States at one point had a communist, and you can learn this like as far as activities in the Cold War, including Oppenheimer. He and his wife were also a part of the United States Communist Party, which was a party just like being a Republican or a Democrat, Independent, Green Party, and there's other parties. But they were part of the United States Communist Party, and which eventually caused a huge split in the United States. But eventually, and just for the sake of time, there were key people who were in the United States government who were responsible for, I'm going to say, eliminating people if they were representing in the Communist Party, in the United States Communist Party. So yeah, that's that. Joseph Stalin was also a key force in the communist revolution or evolution in the revolution. All right. Gulf War, 1990, 1991, and we'll wrap with this. And I do encourage you, this is more so to let you know, like these, if you have not studied these on your own, to go and look these up individually. So I'm more so introducing these key points in history to you, but more so to definitely go and look up, study, read, watch. There's podcasts, there's movies, shows, docuseries, documentaries, podcasts, episodes, books, where you can learn more about the Cold War and Gulf War. Gulf War, 1990, 1991. The Gulf War, also known as the First Gulf War, began with Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, invaded Kuwait in 1990. The invasion was met with international condemnation, and the United Nations swiftly imposed economic sanctions on Iraq. Saddam Hussein was not only involved with the Gulf War, but he was also, I want to say, and I need to do my own research about it right now before I even speak it, because I saw this somewhere that he was well loved in Chicago. I'm like, for what? Chicago. The key to the truth. Yeah, so that is true. Saddam Hussein donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Detroit church and to a church in Detroit, and received the key to the city for more than 2 decades. Soon after he became the president of Iraq. In your own time, look up who these people are, because, and I'm going to conclude by speaking this, that we're going to have an opportunity to represent the United States in the embassies and the consulates, and be a force of good, so we can help protect the United States from abroad, right? So the foreign mission, oftentimes you can be someone who is doing good for the United States and who is a friend of the United States, like Saddam Hussein, president of Iraq, and Joseph Stalin, president, or I'm sorry, I forgot what his actual title was for the USSR. But as soon as things are not aligned, okay, it says former premier. I'm assuming like premier. Either way, he held a top title in the USSR. Sometimes other countries want more than what we are able to collaborate with, and we are not ideally included or interested in their politics or how they treat people, how they starve people, how they kill people, what they do in their own countries. But these people, although historically speaking, these people are where they are now, which are in the past and have passed away. We need to be very aware of what is happening present day, and who are some of these people today that may have some of these traits that will become history for us in the future. And it's not really so much that we need to know who these people are, because we're the CIA, and they're trying to hold their information so that they can do what they need to do to protect the United States. But when we are abroad and we are collaborating and talking to people who are in their governments, people who are in our government, who are locals who work in our embassies, but also engaging into the public when we are abroad in the foreign cities, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to their politics and to what's happening in their news, things that they have done, things that have done public and privately. Because although we haven't had someone other than Vladimir Putin to become a very public face of dislike for a lot of people, there's a lot of people who still right now to this day are developing in those sectors, and they may not be on the political side, they may be on the creator influencer side, they may be billionaires who are, I don't know, I really don't know, but either way, we just need to make sure that we're paying attention to what type of people that have existed in the past, what things they have done, and make sure that we're aware when it's time to for us to take our post and pay attention to these people here in the future. So, and we also want to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in tough situations or bad situations where they ask us for a favor or they ask us to do certain things, and we don't know that, hey, this is committing treason from the United States. So understanding what we stand for, what we don't stand for, who people that we're around, what they may affiliate with. Again, Russia recently had sleeper agents come home, and their children had the children of the sleeper agents had no idea that their parents were even citizens of Russia, let alone a part of their spy group. So I say all that to say is that, again, although we are not CIA, future CIA or future agents, as future diplomats, we need to understand character, situational judgment. We need to understand history, current events, so that even people who are coming to our lives and they may have certain histories, that they're not going to compromise us in the future. Thank you. I know this wasn't like super structured, but this is some of the items that I have individually researched, and of course I wanted to look up more information about it. I hope that this has been helpful, and if you have any questions, again, as I've always said, you can come off mute, you can share. If you're watching this on a replay, feel free to message me on WhatsApp, and I will, or comment on the video, and I will be sure to connect with you on it. So, do you have any thoughts, any contribution, Ruben? I appreciate you for adding that additional information on the Cold War when it comes to the Berlin Wall. That really slipped my mind. Joy, Diana, do you have anything when it comes to U.S. history, current events that you feel like maybe of significance that we may need to look into? It's a Netflix show, Joy. Let me get that. Joy asked for the Netflix show. I'm gonna go grab that real quick. And this is not a promotion opportunity for Netflix, but when the show is good, it's really good, man. Let's see. Cold War, Turning Point, the bomb in the Cold War. That's what it is. No problem. So if you want to take a screenshot of that, I wasn't trying to open it all the way, but yeah, Turning Point, the bomb in the Cold War. As you can see, I definitely watched all the episodes here, and it is definitely worth it. If you have any other recommendations, please share, because I will. I like to make history and things relative and making it, easy to watch and digest. So, but that's all I have for you. Again, do you have any questions for me? Is there something that I should be presenting next week? I think we already have the next one established as far as what we're going to be studying and focusing on, which is U.S. government and the Department of State. So next week we're gonna be talking about the actual structure of the United States government. We're gonna be talking about the executive branch, judicial branch, legislative branch, the Department of State, and where we fit into that big picture. And we're gonna go down the list of the different types of positions. There's a lot of positions, and I did share the promotion opportunity as it relates to the cones and the sectors of the Department of State as it relates to foreign service. But there's a lot of opportunity for promotion in the Department of State. So there's a lot of different jobs. We're going to talk a little bit about some of them, including the DCM and what they do, and also a lot of the other roles that are there. Ruben, did you say something?
No, actually, it's not related to our next session. I wanted to ask you again about FSOT Compass, as you said. So you said it's a good tool. So you suggest sign up and register for Compass?
Yeah, I really enjoy it, FSO Compass. If you want to get a day or two in it, let me know. I'll be happy to share my login information with you, or maybe, but either way, we can work it out. Maybe we'll study together. But a lot of good content in here to study, practice, connect.
And if I can ask some kind of personal question, did you already submit your application? If you want to share, if not, it's fine.
Yeah. Monday.
Any challenges with when you submitted the application? I know that you need to submit your narratives and fill out the application itself.
Yeah, so I actually did have some challenges, and it took me a little bit longer than I anticipated. Ideally, it was supposed to probably only take me no more than about 15 minutes to do the application. but there were certain parts of the application that, and I'm assuming it's because I have an Apple device. I have a Mac, an iMac. I have an iPhone. I got an iPad, and no matter what device I was on, when I went to the application to fill in my work history, like there was a section that was completely like compacted, and I couldn't read it at all. So it only showed me, name the company, or actually like just tell us about your work history. So it had these different slots where you can add your work history.
Yeah.
But I couldn't make out like what it said. Like it was like a bunch of words that were just like overlapping on each other in one area. So what I ended up doing was using a PC, a Windows-based computer, and all of a sudden there were probably another 10 different sections per job. So your tenure, like when you start, when you end, who's your supervisor, who's your manager, is there someone who can
reference?
Is like it was so many other questions that I thought I had everything there. And of course there's limitations on characters that you can use when it comes to sharing about your job. So I was very strategic about making sure that I had all the right information in there, not knowing that some of that information could have been placed in those different fields that I had no idea was there. So that was a personal challenge of mine. It was more technical because of technology than my own comprehension. But yeah, I ended up calling them, and when I say them, the person view, and they had no control over it, but they did help me troubleshoot to discover that, just to find a different device to use. Did you have any difficulties, or are you still submitting your application?
No, I'm planning to submit it shortly, either tomorrow or maybe the day after tomorrow. But thank you for sharing. So it's not a smooth, easy process. So we may have some bumps or challenges.
Yeah, just because it's third party. I want to say some years ago you could apply directly on USA Govs, but this time the application itself, although it's technically the Department of State, but Pearson View, they create a window inside of their software where it looks like the Department of State. So it's technically Person View software where you'll be actually submitting your application, and the government or the Department of State will be pulling your application from there. But if you have a Windows-based computer, you're probably going to be fine. But if you see anything visually wrong, definitely first thing you should do is try to go to the library or somewhere. But other than that, it should only take any more than about 15 minutes to complete. 15 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Travis.
No problem. Pleasure.
Right. I'll contact you about Compass if needed.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you again. Thank you so much. It was very productive session today, and I'm looking forward to the next week.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Deanna, you're good? Everything? How was today?
Hi. Yeah, everything was good. Thank you so much. I learned a lot of information.
Did you learn a lot for real?
Yeah. Yeah, I learned a lot actually. I took notes and everything. So I'm gonna go back and just go over everything else,
I'm gonna put the video in the chat. I'm also drop my notes in the chat. So if you want to go and look these things up individually with your notes, yeah, I just think it's good to know. I mean, yeah, it is a lot. You're right, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like I was rambling a bit.
Oh no, you did good. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a lot of information, but it's what it is. We just have to go there and look and study as much as we can.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you for watching. Manage recording, start recording.